All right, good evening. Thanks for joining us. I am Mike Benner. I am the Public Information Manager here at the Portland Police Bureau, and I will be moderator tonight. We are here to talk about the 2023 annual report. We'll hear from Chief Bob Day, as well as our East Precinct Commander, Jake Jensen. First, a couple of housekeeping matters. We will be taking questions after the presentation, and you can put those questions into the chat during the presentation so you don't forget the question, but we'll wait until our speakers are wrapped up to address them. We understand many of you will have questions. We'll try to get to as many of them as possible. And if there are several on the same topic, we'll try to consolidate them. Again, feel free to throw those questions into the chat as you think of them. Another thing to mention, we are recording this presentation and we'll put it on our YouTube channel for anyone to watch following the meeting. Any questions about this protocol, ask away in the chat. With that, Chief Day, take it away.
Thank you, Mike, and good evening, everyone. Just a great opportunity to be with you this evening. So grateful that you would take the time to listen to some of our accomplishments from 2023. I realize that seems a while back, and we're going to try and do our best to tie it into also what's currently happening today. But we wanted to make sure that you had information on last year's events. So as a reminder, and I will try to articulate this as we go, that sometimes we're comparing 23 numbers to 22 numbers, and I will just make sure that we're on the same page. Any questions, as Mike said, please put them in the chat. As you know, I was appointed into this role last October, so a lot of what we're going to cover tonight is a credit to our Chief Chuck Lavelle, who I followed at the end of last year. I really want to make sure he's given proper credit for serving at an unprecedented time in our organization's history, really leading through some challenges that were unique, and just appreciated him staying on. He is assistant chief of our community services branch now, and I rely on him and look to him daily for counsel and advice and support. He really did a good job. Before we go any further, I also want to recognize how proud I am of the personnel in the Portland Police Bureau, both our sworn staff and our professional staff. We could not obviously do this job without them. Their dedication and commitment in an environment that's not always easy, in fact, sometimes dangerous. And they oftentimes meet people at their toughest times in life. I like to say very few times do people call 911 and say, hey, we're celebrating our child's 1-year birthday. Would you like to come over? Or my parents just had their 50th anniversary. Would you like to stop by? That's not the typical calls that we get. So we know we're stepping in at a time of crisis. And I really appreciate the commitment and the empathy and the passion and dedication that our members show every day, even those behind the scenes. I also want to just say thank you to you once again. I mean, the Police Bureau is the community. We're in this together. I recognize our role and our assignment is unique, but I really see us as the community, and not the police and the community, but rather we're in this together. Our actions have impact. They have impact on many of you. They also have impact on our members. And although we have a distinct role in our city, I really see us as part of the community, and you showing up tonight and being willing to take a few minutes to hear from us is very meaningful. I'm going to throw a lot of information at you. I did this last week with Central Precinct. It can be a little bit overwhelming and a little bit of a sprint. We've got a short period of time and a lot of things we're really proud about, as well as things, lessons learned. So I'm going to go off camera as I kind of go through my notes so I can stay on track, and as we go through the PowerPoint. But rest assured, there will be time to address questions and answers after Commander Jensen's finished up. And he will be following me, and I can assure you his PowerPoint is much shorter than mine. So with that, let's kind of just jump right on in. And just, when I was appointed chief, I really focused the organization on 3 goals: reducing crime and the fear of crime, transforming the dynamic between the police and the people we serve, and focus on organizational health and development. I have stepped into this role at a time when we have really unprecedented community support and cooperation. I've been so encouraged, regardless of where I go in the city, a collective attitude. We all want Portland to be better. I chose these 3 goals because they are intentional and they require action. None of these can be done by just sitting around and hoping for the best. all of them require us to step into a space where we are investing in one another. Certainly, our relationship with the people we serve is the most critical, as that's where we continue to build on the trust we have earned and try and establish and grow that trust. I'm constantly being asked by people and businesses, how can we help? How can we positively impact the city we love? And I'm grateful for that. It makes me hopeful as we make strides in public safety. Some other accomplishments. Let's start with some of the positives. Last year, the city of Portland saw success in areas of crime reduction. Reported person crimes decreased by 1% compared to the prior year. Now, remember, we're talking about comparing 23 to 22. We're actually seeing a decrease in numbers this year as well. But as you know, gun violence really soared in recent years, but last year shooting incidents fell 22%. They still remain higher than the 4-year average, but they were definitely trending in the right direction. Homicide offenses also decreased from 2022, with homicides involving a firearm decreasing by 20%. Any loss of life is too much. Primary focus of public safety is the preservation of life. There were 73 homicides in Portland in 2023, 61 of them involving a firearm. So we continue to be very much focused here in 2024 on reducing the violence, both related to firearms as well as assaults and other areas. When we look at property crimes, which we know can deeply affect people, they decreased 12% compared to 2022. Property crimes, I do not want to minimize. They can have a significant impact on individuals. The feeling of violation, whether your car is broken into, your home, certainly businesses suffer. Maybe a stolen car prevents you from getting to work or getting a child to daycare or to school, etc. So I just want you to know that although obviously in a time when resources are at a premium, we want to make sure we're reducing violence. We're also very much aware of the impact that property crimes do have in our everyday lives. Theft of car parts was down significantly, 56%. Theft from cars was down, and overall 25% reduction in stolen vehicles compared to the year prior. And that has a lot to do with our stolen vehicle missions, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. As we focus on our missions, and we've really used that as an attempt to try and make some crime reduction strategies. Here's a few of them on the page for you to take a look at. We do about 2 stolen vehicle missions a month. You might be aware that we do this in partnership with Oregon Health Sciences University using a data-based approach. So we're not just, randomly running all over the city, but very intentional. Commander Jensen's team out of East Precinct developed this approach, and we're now using it citywide. And we've seen a continued decrease in our stolen vehicles. In 2023, we did about 25 retail theft missions. This is where we work with department stores and others. And just recently, through one of those investigations here in present day, we were able to follow up from Central Precinct with some stolen items that had been stored out in East Precinct. So we're really using all of the police bureau to address challenges citywide. We've conducted a number of human trafficking missions, recognizing that the men and women that are oftentimes being pushed into this industry, it's against their will. And so rather than focusing on the individuals, we've been looking at, the traffickers, and seeing some success there. Shoplifting is up, but we believe that's also related to the fact that we have been continuing to emphasize our desire to combat retail theft and encouraging the reporting of theft. All of these missions have had an impact on crime reduction. And we have been keeping that as we go forward in 2024. We're going to talk about staffing in a minute, but one area that helps expand our resources is the use of technology. We started a drone program in April of 2022. In April of 23. And, they allow us to really decrease the amount of time it takes to process some of our more complex investigations. For example, fatal traffic scenes require a great deal of detail, and we can launch a drone, and with the new technology, it's able to diagram and provide us with a tremendous amount of information that frees up personnel. It makes it safer for those on scene. It also means we can reduce the time that roads or thoroughfares may be closed for major traffic investigations. We also use drones with our explosive disposal unit, which makes them more efficient and safer. And we have a public facing dashboard. If you ever, either maybe Mike Benner can put it in the chat, or certainly on our website, we have a public facing dashboard that demonstrates all of our drone deployments, where we're using them, when, and if you want to take a look at that, if you're curious. We do have an air support unit, an airplane that we've been using extensively to support operations in the field, and we were able to replace our plane last year. That plane that we replaced, was from 1978, so we upgraded to a 2015 model. The air support unit responded to nearly 2,000 calls for service, with almost 1,200 of them being in high priority, and they did everything from helping direct officers to catch suspects, to actually, recovery of firearms during missions, et cetera. It's amazing the things that we can see from the sky. And finally, we're excited to have our traffic division back. They were redeployed in May of 23. This was after a 2-year hiatus where they were sent to the precincts due to low staffing levels. Just last week, we made a recommitment to move some personnel to make sure we can maintain an afternoon and day shift traffic team. This is a significant movement on our part to help combat fatal crashes and other traffic related matters like DUIs and et cetera. We may have heard we're in the process right now of rolling out body worn cameras. I was on the first community forum discussion around body worn cameras in 2015, so it's only taken us 9 years, but we're getting there. And I imagine by September, we're going to be fully deployed with body worn cameras in our operations unit and start looking at others. Really super excited about that. We did a pilot project last fall for 90 days, solicited a lot of input from Central Precinct and Focus Intervention team that wore them. They were very, very well received, and I know officers are embracing this new technology. So should have that up to speed here. And East will be the last ones to receive them in the coming weeks. So Central and North now has them. In the area of community engagement as well, our behavioral health unit continues to be a tremendous resource for the city and for the Bureau. They facilitated 80 trainings and outreach events last year. This is where we have officers paired with mental health specialists, and they have caseloads and follow up on folks that are at high risk within the system that are coming in contact with law enforcement. Our Office of Community Engagement worked closely with the Bureau Bias Crime Unit and our advisory groups. We have a very robust detective division unit that follows up on bias crimes, makes sure that we are taking those seriously and demonstrating that to the community. It has been really proven to be a successful model that improves crime prevention, the fear of crime, while also sharing public awareness about these crimes. So we work with our advisory groups to share that information. Sometimes bias crimes, bias events can be difficult to understand, but when we are able to work with our culturally specific advisory groups, such as Muslim or Latino or Asian Pacific Islander, American Council, and others, really helps us to increase communication and understanding in that highly sensitive area. And finally, we implemented walking beats towards the end of last year. This is one of my first priorities, really focusing on getting officers out of the cars and engaging. I participated in several of these. We wanted to create a visible presence in the holiday season downtown. We had over 223 Portland Police Bureau members who participated, and we documented about 5,400 individuals and businesses contacted. This was just an engagement effort. This was not intended to be enforcement oriented. This was just placing men and women in uniform out in the community. And for 45 days, we replicated that when we had the Women's March Madness here at the end of March. And we had several people from outside the city. And I'm hoping as staffing increases that we're going to be able to do it more. This was such an encouragement to both the officers and the community that we really want to continue to build on that visibility and that relationship time that we don't always have when we're just responding to calls for service. I talked a little bit of one of my goals about, organizational growth, organizational health. The police bureau continues to hire. We're actually having more success than some of our partner agencies. The state of Oregon has the fewest number of officers per capita of any state in the union. Everybody is competing for bodies, and really proud of the work the personnel division, as hiring continues to be a major theme. You'll notice that we are also focusing on our sworn staff, our non-sworn staff, our professional staff, including our PS3s. Our PS3s are our public safety specialists, who are our alternative response model. So these are unarmed members of the organization that go to calls and support officers, block traffic in different roles, because we know that not every police call requires a armed response. So we're trying to be innovative in that as well. Our hiring remains consistent. As noted on the slide, we had over 1,250 applications, did about 526 police officer backgrounds. We tend to hire about 5% a year. So we're trying to get to 2,000 applicants a year. That would allow us to hire about 100 folks a year, as we are woefully under the national standard for number of officers that we should have. Last year, we were really struggling to not only hire, but then get them into the basic academy. You may be aware, but every officer has to go to the basic academy down in Salem, and there was a backlog, and sometimes it was taking months and months and months. A credit to Governor Kotek and the legislature, they provide additional funding and support, and credit to DPSST, the Academy, and Director Castle for their innovative approach, expanding academy sizes, and now we no longer are having that backlog. So we're able to send our recruits right away to the academy to meet the basic training requirements. We were also able to fill 24 vacant records division positions, and that division had reached its lowest point ever in 2022. And these positions are really behind the scenes. You're not going to see them, but they work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And we literally could not do our job without them. The folks in the records division make sure that all the data and information that we gather and retrieve is properly maintained and kept and available for public records requests, internal resources, investigations, etc. So really, really proud of the work that Jen Hollings, our records manager, has done over the course of last year. Our wellness program really has become a point of emphasis. This is something that's growing nationally. Portland's been a leader in this, recognizing that the need for our members to be able to have an opportunity to focus on their personal wellness, and that they are in a great position physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, to be able to manage the challenges. We have an in-house mental health professional that's made available to members throughout the week. This particular psychologist is available several hours a week. Officers can sign up. It's just confidential. When they're not signing up with her, then she's out on ride-alongs and engaging with other members of the Bureau. We've also made some progress on a cardiac screening process, which will allow officers to receive some feedback and information about their cardiac health, because we know the risk of heart disease and the stress related to the job. And then also doing more training with peer coaches, really focusing on vicarious trauma training. So I've often said that I'm unapologetically focused on the wellness of our officers, because in reality, they're going to be the ones that are going to be the face of the police bureau. And we want to make sure that they have the right equipment and the right attitude and the right mental state to go out and really be effective and provide the high level of service that Portlanders demand. And, some of the challenges, we talked a little bit about reducing crime and the fear of crime. Certainly crime statistics were down in 23, and we're grateful for that, but they remain higher as we look back over a five-year window. Homicide rates fell, but, in a 10-year window, we averaged an increase. So, we want to make sure that even though we're having some success, this is not by any chances a victory lap at all. Also, in the area of traffic deaths, sadly, in 2023, we had 75 people die in traffic crashes, making it one of the highest years since 1986. Several pedestrian crashes, and we believe this is really some of our more vulnerable population, our houseless population, that some of which are staying next to busy roadways. And of course, if you're in Oregon, certainly in the winter months with the darkness and the rain and the difficulty around line of sight, we're really trying to work closely with outreach workers, our Department of Transportation, our traffic division, and others to make sure that we are doing our very best to minimize traffic fatalities. And also, there's been a lot of information shared about overdose deaths. As you can see, they continue to climb. This year, we're going to be potentially could see even more than the 300 recorded in 2023. Fentanyl has really caught everybody flat-footed coming out of the pandemic. And so we are increasing our efforts and trying to really draw awareness to this issue. We remain committed to using as many resources as we can, especially downtown, where we see it so visibly represented on our streets. Governor Kotek, once again, has lent her support to us through the Oregon State Police. They've been partnering with us downtown. We've also been working with outreach workers and organizations to be available to come alongside of us when we encounter people in crisis downtown and maybe find alternatives to arrests. We recently expanded our bike squad, which has been very successful in doing outreach and enforcement in downtown. We now have a bike squad on the afternoon shift, which also covers part of the weekend. That's allowing us to address many issues. And then, of course, the visible presence that we talked about earlier, we're going to continue to look for ways to strengthen that. One other challenge around organizational health is our staffing. I'm not going to spend a ton of time here. We had 72 sworn members and 35 professional staff members retire or separate in 2023. But we're with our hiring, we're kind of just sort of treading water. We're going to have a couple of retirement waves this year where we have almost 100 members eligible. I'm really hoping going into 25, we're kind of level off a little bit and be able to start building up our workforce. I'm going to be working with our elected officials to really dive into these numbers and hopefully increase our authorized sworn strength in the coming years. Currently, we are authorized 881 sworn positions. That includes all ranks from me on down. I think we're pretty close to that 811 number, actually maybe a little bit less. We've had some people separate recently, but we tend to be hanging right around 800 out of the 880 that were available. And about 100 of those 800 are in training. So we do have some staffing challenges, but I'm encouraged by our recruitment efforts, the work in our personnel division, and the growing interest by people to join the Portland Police Bureau. And I'm hoping in 2025, we can start to close the gap on some of those vacancies. Excuse me. As we look a little bit at training, I want to kind of move to a different direction and discuss other important topics of interest to the community. Excuse me. The Bureau's training is always a top priority. Training is a critical part of our learning. In 2023, we hired a new civilian education director, Director Rodriguez. After an extensive hiring process, we were able to bring her on board. She has allowed us to place a greater focus on adult learning principles and really help support our officers around instructor development. All full-time instructors will be expected to attend our ongoing instructor development course. This has been a great addition. I met with Dr. Rodriguez today, in fact, just super impressed and super encouraged to have her on board. Her background in academia is really strengthening our training division. Training has a number of academies occurring any given period of time, including ones for our new hires and advanced academy, cadets, public safety, support specialists that I mentioned earlier, specialized training, etc. In 2023, the training division conducted a 2-day in-service for all sworn members and a 1-day one for sworn supervisors in command. And then we have an online learning management system where we publish 25 training videos, multiple directives and legal updates. So we not only train in person, but we're training via online where officers learn at their own pace. And the video production unit also produced a video highlighting the clarification to the directive on consent searches. And we're going to talk about consent searches in a little bit. But we are constantly pushing out information, oftentimes video information, to help officers digest that new information in real time if we can't get them in to a classroom. I want to touch on a little bit the topic of force. And like I said, I know we're moving through this thing pretty quickly, and I'm hoping questions are going into the chat because I definitely want to hear from you, but I want to get this material all to you. And first, as we talk about force, which is again, such a significant topic, we spend a lot of effort to ensure our uses of force are appropriate and that we hold officers accountable when they act outside of policy. I just want to emphasize our overarching principle regarding the use of appropriate and constitutional force. Our directive says the community expects and the Portland Police Bureau requires that members use only the objectively reasonable force necessary to perform their duties and overcome the threat or resistance of the subject under the totality of the circumstances. Really understand those words are important to us, that we hear your expectation and we also require and hold people to a higher standard. There were 4 uses of deadly force in 2023. All 4 of them were fatalities. And I fully recognize how deadly force can have an impact on our community. I want you to know that these are thoroughly investigated. We use PPB resources, other agencies, so there's outside eyes, the district attorney's office. Sometimes the district attorney's office has involved the Oregon Department of Justice in review. All of our deadly force usages follow a stringent process, which is reflective in our directive listed there, 10-10-10. And then you can also know, for spirit of transparency, there's a summary of every deadly force incident since 2010 on our website. I encourage you to take a look at them. It's open source data if you want to know some of the details over our uses of deadly force over the last 14 years. Officers in 2023 initiated over 55,000 calls for service, and we used force in about 0.4%. So less than 1% of those 55,000 calls had a force reported incident. Community members or visitors, as you can see, initiated over 213,000 calls for service. And in the community initiated calls for service, we'll use force in 0.19% of these calls. So we continue to track that. All of these numbers are also on our website in the open data portal. One of the things that we're doing this year, that the recent change we just made is in the reporting, and not, excuse me, the reporting, but the reviewing of Category 4 force. We consider Category 4 force to be the lowest level of force. I'll give you an example. If I am taking somebody into custody and I'm bringing their hands together to handcuff them, and during that process, they maybe resist or push against my hands, we would consider that to be Category 4 force, where they're ultimately handcuffed, but maybe we had to coerce them to that handcuffing position. There's no injury, there's no persistent pain, and we would typically do a very extensive review of that force. With body-worn cameras coming on board, it's going to be capturing more of that information. Our officers are still going to be required to document the force. So we are documenting all force incidents, but through the use of body-worn cameras and through the reports, a sergeant will be able to evaluate whether or not the force was appropriate or not. We could spend a lot of time on this tonight. I just want to emphasize that we are still documented. It's only the review that is changing. We believe that this could actually save us thousands of hours a year in officer time, because sergeant would normally have to respond to the scene. There would be an extensive overview, investigation, multiple witness interviews or questions asked. And we want to make sure that we are really maximizing our time in the areas of greatest importance. And we were not seeing a great deal of complaints or concerns around these handcuffing procedures that were taking up quite a bit of our review time. Just a little bit of a different way to do a business, but it's really in line with national best practices. Most of the agencies and that we looked at and we speak to. There is an analysis video that was done to illustrate the reason for this change. It's on our website. So if you want to go to our website, and I think Mike Benner can put it in the chat, and it kind of highlights why we made this change and the impact and the benefit that we believe it's going to have both for the Bureau and for the community. We recently released our stops data. This is also on our website. We've routinely released our stops data numbers for years. I'm committed to transparency. I know the Police Bureau has a long history of sharing information. We published the 2022 report last month. In 2023, officers performed a little over 17,000 driver stops across the city. That's a 26% increase, as noted, and we believe that's largely related because of the additional traffic division. The stops performed by units outside the traffic division were fairly static, fairly consistent, but our focus intervention team had a sizable number of stops, and this is the team that is been asked to focus primarily on gun violence. So they have a really sort of data-driven focus mission where they're attempting to work with and do outreach and interrupt firearms violence. So 97.8% of drivers were stopped for traffic reasons. That's the primary reasons why we make these stops. Speeding, of course, being the number one offense. You can see some other numbers on there in terms of people being stopped for various reasons. Drivers perceived to be Black or African American were significantly more likely to be stopped for a non-moving violation by non-traffic personnel than other perceived racial ethnic groups. And I believe there is a correlation between the stops and the work the Focus Intervention Team is asked to do to combat gun violence. The Focus Intervention Team is unique in that they have a community oversight group dedicated to working hand in hand with them. And we have been meeting with them regularly, going over the stops data information, and we've been relying upon the community oversight group and the officers to continue to meet with community to better understand concerns and explain our processes and decision makings around stops to make sure that they are equitable, fair, and just, as well as keeping the community safe. So I do see those numbers. We're aware of the potential concerns, but I'm also very encouraged at the engagement we're having in the community level and at a bureau level with folks around this information. In 2023, about 1 out of every 125 stops, included a discretionary search. Non-traffic officers perform the bulk of searches associated with driver stops. And once again, that's essentially our focus intervention team. They're the ones who do that the most as they pursue firearms crimes. And then finally, in 2023, our search rate is the lowest on record for the Portland Police Bureau. We're always striving to stay within guidelines of the United States and Oregon Constitution, Oregon law. We continue to discuss with community members their rights and responsibilities that when stopped, community members have a responsibility to comply with an officer's, excuse me, I sneezed there, with an officer's direction. So we just want to continue to work with the community so there's clear understanding of our expectations as well as their rights, which goes into the consent searches. We implemented a new practice to ensure compliance with legislative changes. So officers create a record of their requests to search and provide a written explanation of the right the individual has. Our policy actually goes far beyond state law. In fact, we require officers to provide a card that explains in 5 languages a person's right to refuse to consent to search. This card explains to people that they have the right to say no when asked for consent search and to withdraw their consent search at any time during the search. These steps do not affect our authority to conduct a search without consent if the officer has a legal basis to do so. So we can still search people if we have a legal basis to do so. But when it comes to consent searches, we want to make it very clear that individuals have the freedom to tell us no or revoke that consent anytime. And we not only explain that to them, we not only record that on our body-worn camera, but we actually provide them a card explaining that to them. The results of the stop data that I talked about a little bit more, and we can visit that more in the chat, can certainly raise some questions about bias-free policing due to some of the disparities I pointed out. I want to assure you that we are, as an organization, committed to requiring officers to engage in bias-free policing, that our requirements, our policy are actually more stringent than state law. And we are constantly working with our officers in the area of implicit bias and understanding equity and diversity issues. So we're very much engaged in that conversation. I really hope this information was helpful. I know it was a lot. It's already 6:37, and you're going to hear from Commander Jensen in a moment. These are some of the things that occurred in 2023, some of the work that's being done, what remains to be done to address crime, concerns, trust, and livability in the community. I just want to encourage you to get involved. You're doing that tonight. I'm so grateful that you took the opportunity to be here. Stay informed by following our news, our budget updates. We're always open to any kind of feedback and words of support or criticism. I certainly like to recognize the good work of our members. When you experience that, if you let me know, I will certainly pass that along. And we need your help. You know, we're in this together. I have told many people that one of the reasons I came out of retirement to come back to this position was because I saw such a high degree of community engagement in this area of public safety. And so we want to be a part of this together, whether you're advocating, providing new ideas, new resources, holding us accountable, recruiting new members to join the Portland Police Bureau as we're always hiring. Any of those are much appreciated. So thank you for your time. Thank you for listening. And Jake, I'll turn it over to you before we get to our question and answer time. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Chief. And good evening, everyone. Thank you for taking time out of your evening right around dinner time to come listen to the Chief and I talk about what happened in 2023. I've met some of you, but unfortunately, I'm new here and I haven't had a chance to meet everyone that I've wanted to meet. I'm Jake Jensen. I'm the new commander of East Precinct. I was promoted and assigned to this job in April. And because I haven't had a chance to meet you all, I want to just share a little bit about myself. I have deep roots in East Portland. My grandparents lived here. My dad grew up in Lentz. I grew up just outside of East Portland, played Little League here, spent lots of times at friends' houses over in East Portland. And this was my first assignment here as a newly off probation police officer. I worked night and afternoon shifts here. Ultimately, when I got promoted to sergeant, I was able to come back here. I've really enjoyed my time at East Precinct. Two of the things I really appreciate here are the camaraderie of the officers and sergeants that work here and the support that we get from the community. And I've seen that support very evident in my short time here. So as we get started here, like the Chief, I'm going to go off camera and share my screen and start this PowerPoint here. All right, so East Precinct, I'm going to cover some of the same ground that the Chief did, just from the point of view of East. East is one of the 3 police precincts in Portland. It's home to more than 240,000 people. It's quite big at 36 square miles, and there's over 700 road miles in the precinct. So it's a lot of ground for our officers to cover. The precinct boundaries aren't drawn exactly the same as neighborhood boundaries. So we have 18 neighborhoods that are wholly contained with East, and then we share 6 other neighborhoods with mainly Central Precinct, but also North Precinct. And our precinct's divided into 10 patrol districts that we staff with about 80 deployable officers right now across 3 shifts. In 2023, the command team here, and I saw one of them on the meeting earlier, former commander, now Assistant Chief Erica Nilsson, spent a significant amount of time rebuilding community contacts that had languished in the wake of the COVID pandemic. And that work was very significant, very important. It's just much harder to quantify than crime statistics. And so just know that the work that was done here is built on a foundation of working with the community, in the community, to accomplish our mutual goals. Here is East Precinct specific crime in 2023, and these numbers are drawn from the 2023 annual report that's available online. So crimes down across all 3 major crime categories. Person crimes here were down 6%, and significantly we had serious person crimes like aggravated assaults and homicides down almost 20% each. Property crimes, again, down. Vehicle theft in East was down 22%. Robbery is down 16%. And society crimes, which are weapons offenses, drug offenses, those sorts of things, down 6%. We also saw some crimes trend upwards, and although that can be concerning at first, I believe these are actually all positive indicators. So the first thing you see there is that human trafficking is up 180% and prostitution's up 178%. Obviously, those two crimes are kind of tied together, and those are very significant increases at almost 200% each. And those increases are due directly to the human trafficking missions that we reinitiated with the support of the human trafficking detail in September of 2023. I'll talk more about those missions in a minute, but I want to just acknowledge that that significant increase is due to those missions. And in East Precinct, we also saw shoplifting go up 73%. As the chief mentioned, that's due, we believe, in part to the success of our retail theft missions that I'll talk about here momentarily, as well as an increase in online reporting, especially from some of the major businesses we have here in the city. So as far as missions go, there's three main mission types that we conducted here in East Precinct in 2023. The first one of those is retail theft missions. Those missions were conducted in collaboration with area retailers, as well as other law enforcement agencies, in particular the Multnomah County Sheriff's Office, including their TriMet detail, the Multnomah County Office of Community Justice, that may be better known as Parole and Probation, and the Multnomah County District Attorney's Office. We really thank them for their help with these missions. In East, we hosted 8 missions here. And what that means is those missions, the geographical area was in East Precinct. However, it's important to know that East Precinct personnel also participated in many missions in other precincts, and in fact, in other parts of the county as kind of a joint support. The chief has a philosophy of one bureau, and we're fully bought into that philosophy here, where we all help each other to accomplish the goals that we've mutually set. As you can see, those missions were quite successful, recovering about $2,000 in property every mission. And then in addition to the day of mission activities, the East Precinct Neighborhood Response Team spent time working with the retailers in the DA's office to make sure that the retailers knew what evidence was needed for prosecution and to combine cases against repeat offenders for maximum accountability in the justice system. The next mission type that we ran is a human trafficking mission. This is a mission that was led by the human trafficking detail, and these missions were restarted in response to community complaints about street level prostitution in the area. As the chief mentioned, we take a victim-centric approach, and so we acknowledge, we know that many of these providers are not out working the streets through their choice, that they're actually being trafficked. And so one of the goals of the mission is to contact the providers and try and get them connected with services so that they have the option of making the choice to lead the life. And in addition to trying to make inroads with the providers, an additional goal is to interdict the buyers, arrest them, and hopefully through the arrest and the process that comes after it, which may include a class on the harms of purchasing sex, hopefully reduce their inclination to return to 82nd Avenue to commit crimes there. And again, as you can see, these missions were quite successful, and the stats here don't tell the whole story because the missions resulted in a significant decrease in visible prostitution along 82nd Avenue that results in increased neighborhood livability. The final mission type that we conducted in 2023 was a stolen vehicle operation. This is commonly known by its initials SVO, or the SVO. And you may have seen some news coverage of this mission in local media or more recently in the Wall Street Journal. Again, these missions include a wide variety of partners, all of Multnomah County partners I mentioned with the retail theft mission, and in addition, the Port of Portland Police Department, Gresham Police Department, Clackamas County Sheriff's Office, the community group PDX Stolen Cars, and the OHSU Night Cancer Research Center. And just like with the retail theft missions, these SBO missions would not be nearly as successful without our partners, and we thank them for helping us and participating with us in this problem that is a nationwide problem, quite frankly. Our SBO missions are evidence-based, and this gives you a good idea of where we're trying to take things. That means that officers use, in this case, it means that officers use visible indicators that we call enrichment factors to increase the likelihood that a car they stop is stolen. What we want to do here is recover more stolen cars with fewer stops. And on average, SBO missions result in 1 stolen car recovered for every 4 encounters. We conducted 19 missions in 2023, and as you can see, we recovered an average of almost 10 cars per mission. We also seized more than 30 firearms, and some of those firearms at a rate roughly equivalent to the firearms that are seized by our focused intervention team track back to shootings in Portland. And the way we're able to tell that is using the NIBIN system, which is the National Integrated Ballistic Information Network. It's a way to track individual firearms using unique markings that are imprinted on shell casings when the gun is fired. A kind of analogous way to think of it is like being fingerprints for guns. And due to the innovative work being done by the SBO team received a $800,000 grant from the U.S. Department of Justice's Smart Policing Initiative, and that's going to allow us to continue to conduct these missions for another 2 years. So let's talk a little bit about 2024. What does the kind of the current and future look like for East Precinct? Again, we have a long way to go, but things are continuing to trend positively in 2024. Of note, shootings are down roughly 20% again this year, and stolen vehicles are down roughly 40% this year. One of the reasons we think that shootings are down roughly 20% year over year is the active shooting review that we have every week that East Precinct is a very avid participant in. It's a meeting that is part of the city's ceasefire strategy, where law enforcement officers and agencies from across the region gather together and focus on discussing recent shootings with the goals of identifying leads for investigation and prosecution, and identifying possible retaliation to get ahead of the retaliation and stop that from happening. Our mission work continues this year. We've added 2 additional mission types in 2024. As the chief said, our goal is to run 2 SBO missions per year, and that has expanded into the different precincts so that we're running them citywide, and indeed at times metro area wide, going into Gresham, Multnomah County, and Clackamas County to as part of our kind of working back and forth with our other agency partners. August is going to be a slightly slower month this year. We're doing 1 SBO mission and then no retail theft mission. That's primarily due to staffing issues with people being on vacation and other folks being temporarily assigned to other projects or divisions like the body-worn camera rollout, traffic motorcycle training, and focused intervention team operations. In 2023, we started planning for a criminal interdiction mission that's designed to address street-level crime that's visible in the community, things like drug selling. And we deployed that mission in 2024. That's a very personnel-intensive mission, and so we're not able to run those as often as we'd like. However, night shift in particular is doing what I term mini missions, where they take a handful of officers and go out and try and address that street level crime just as a smaller group, as more informally organized and not a formal mission with an incident action plan. The other mission that we've implemented in 2024 is called the Triple NERT mission. And in this mission type, the neighborhood response teams from each precinct, so all 3, get together and intensively work on a project in the home NERTs precinct. So typically what we're looking to do is 1 triple NERT mission per precinct per month. And this has been a great tool for us to build collaboration, build relationships, build skills across the different NERT teams. In East Precinct, the most recent one that we did here focused on issues along 82nd Avenue, more of the southern stretch as opposed to the northern stretch. And then, as the chief mentioned, our staffing issues remain a challenge. It's reduced our capability of doing missions in August, and that's an issue we're working through. We rely on that 1 bureau approach to get things done, and it's very common right now for the 3 precincts to send officers to cover each other's high priority calls when resources are scarce, and they could be scarce due to being a precinct being significantly below minimum staffing, or there could be a major incident that draws all the resources of that precinct in and then other officers from other precincts are needed to cover the high priority calls that are still going on in that precinct. A good example of this recently is East and North precincts teaming up to establish a perimeter and successfully arrest 3 suspects believed to have been involved in a shooting earlier in the night that fled from officers when they attempted a traffic stop. We also benefit from our solid partnerships with surrounding law enforcement agencies. Relationships that we have formed during our mission work have continued to flourish, and we're grateful for the good relationships we have with all of our Multnomah County and surrounding law enforcement agencies and also the district attorney's office. In closing, 2023 was a busy year for East Precinct, and we made good progress in addressing some of the crime and public safety challenges in this part of the city. That being said, there's still a long ways to go, and want to acknowledge that the work that we did, the work that we did was only made possible through our partnerships with the community, in the community, including area retailers, neighborhood associations, and PDX Stolen Cars, and all of our surrounding law enforcement agencies. In 2024, one of my priorities is to build on that work and continue to build relationships with the community and make it so that East Precinct is fully integrated into the community that we are called to serve. And with that, I want to thank you for your time today.
All right, Commander Jensen, thank you for your presentation, and Chief Day, thank you for yours. I don't know about everybody on this call, but that is a lot of information, a lot to retain. A reminder of what I said at the very top, and that is this is being recorded and it will be put on our YouTube page, so you can always go back. Also, I put some notable links into the chat, so feel free to poke around on that. I think the main one to draw your attention to is the open data portal, and on that site you can find basically everything that you'd be looking for that has been discussed tonight. With that, let's get to some Q&A. We have about 35 minutes, so I don't want to waste any time, and we'll start at the top. And the first question comes from Ariel over at Coin, and I think this one is best directed to Chief Day. Keeping in mind the most recent gun deaths this year, as well as the most recent shooting at Dawson Park near a local preschool, what is being done right now to address gun violence in Portland? What has worked? And Chief, what needs to improve?
Thank you. Thank you for the question. Yeah, the challenge around gun violence is certainly not unique to the city of Portland. So first of all, we're constantly reviewing best practices nationally. Commander Jensen mentioned the ceasefire model. That's one aspect or model that we've adopted out of Oakland. It's also used in other places across the country, but we visited Oakland several times and have viewed the good work they've done in the reduction of homicides by implementing this model, which Ceasefire is an organization that's separate from the Police Bureau, but works very closely with us. Also, what we're doing locally, so Ceasefire works in partnership with the heavy investment that the city has made in community-based organizations. So we have contracts with 3 or 4 organizations that have people with lived experience and criminal justice involved experience, and they are out in the community trying to interdict and prevent gun violence from even happening. So lots and lots of outreach. The community members that know others in the community, that can see where maybe somebody is engaging in a high-risk lifestyle, and they can step in and prevent that violence from happening, is really the ultimate goal, because so much of what we do is on the back end. So there's a heavy investment in the community-based organizations, working with Ceasefire, working with our Office of Violence Prevention, all of which are separate from PPB. But we meet with them regularly, talk with them regularly, and work closely with them. Within the Police Bureau, as I mentioned earlier, we have our Focus Intervention Team, which is really their intentionality is around firearms and reducing gun violence. So they work closely with another program in the Police Bureau called ECST, Enhanced Crisis. I just lost it there for a minute, Jake. But
Enhanced Community Safety Team.
Yeah, Enhanced Community Safety Team. Thank you, Mike. ECST. We're nothing if we don't have acronyms in policing, I tell you. So we have the Focus Intervention Team and ECST work hand in hand following up on gun cases and shootings. As long as it's not a homicide, then we have our homicide division assigned to that. So they work very proactively, as I mentioned, with the community groups. And and then as Commander Jensen mentioned, once a week, we literally require all of the leaders and the precincts and the investigations to get together and go through all the shooting cases every week, talk about what they're doing. The command officers for those divisions are held accountable for what's happening in their precincts or in their investigations. Those are attended by people in the chief's office, a chief level position, to make sure that that accountability is happening. And then, at the end of the day, a lot of these missions that we're running, even though they're not focused on firearms, as you noticed in the stolen vehicle mission, multiple firearms seized, human trafficking, retail theft, drug spotting missions, we're getting firearms off the street that way. So all of those are very comprehensive, holistic, community centric, but also enforcement approach towards gun violence. And I believe we are seeing benefits to that. Gun violence overall is down this year. Injuries by gun violence are down this year. So I do believe we're making some progress.
All right, Chief, thanks. Grab a sip of water because I think we have another one coming your way here. And Commander Jensen, you might be able to weigh in on this one as well. This one comes from, I believe it's Kayla Franklin. Kayla, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. The question is, has PPB considered creating a focused street racing unit with dedicated technology to gather intelligence and partner with local agencies such as the FBI, AFT, and DEA? And will PPB recommend to the state legislature to create a spectator ordinance? And lastly, given the presence of guns and gun violence occurring at these events, has the Police Bureau, the Office of Violence Prevention, and the Community Safety Division started looking into models such as ceasefire for preventative measures in this arena?
Yeah, I can take the first part of that at least. I was recently involved in a conversation where we explored the idea of being able to create, at the very least, a mission task force so that we could have a group of people dedicated to the stolen vehicle operation, the human trafficking mission, the criminal interdiction missions, the various missions that we run here, street takeover missions that we run in response to street takeover events that we learn about. And the conclusion we came to after careful study and a lot of conversation was we just don't have the people to do that right now as much as we might want to. And so for the time being, we've got very dedicated, very passionate people that do this as a detached assignment. In fact, I just had a conversation with a couple of them today regarding tactics to use, best practices to ensure that as we're responding, we're doing the best that we possibly can to keep people safe and hold people accountable for the harm they're causing in the community. As far as creating a task force, I think that's a great idea down the line. It's just not feasible for us right now.
Yeah, I just would add, thank you, Commander. I would just add, the work that we're doing that is having an impact is all being done in addition to the routine day-to-day work that the Bureau is asked to do. So many of these missions are done on overtime, or officers are adjusting their shifts, or they're taking on extra responsibilities to be able to provide this level of service. And so the task force idea is great. The use of technology. I'm very much interested in working with the legislature on a spectator ordinance. I think that would probably be an easy sell. We've seen high degree of violence associated with these street takeovers. We've seen homicides. We've seen people seriously injured. I'm really proud of the innovative tactics that PPB has developed to combat these. There was a period of time where we were kind of at a loss and they sort of ran unchecked. We've been very intentional over the last 6 to 9 months. We've been seizing cars and making arrests, and the district attorney's office has been prosecuting. So we have a lot of ground to make up, and Portland has a lot of rich environment for that kind of behavior, but the word is getting out that it's no longer just a free-for-all, and we're taking these very, very seriously and working with our partners and finding partner agencies that will come in, and like Oregon State Police and Sheriff's Office and so forth, to help us provide better service and really maybe try and nip some of that ahead of time.
All right, thank you, Chief. This next question could be for Commander Jensen, I believe. This is from Daryl George. He says, does PPB still partner with community members, businesses, and industry to identify rest stops for officers in the community? What are the guidelines for exploring this partnership in the community?
Yeah, thanks for that question, Mike. So the rest stop program and the officers very much appreciate that. I'm well aware that they make good use of the rest stops to have some downtime on their shift to eat their lunch or just take a break when they're able to. And that program is actually not a Portland Police Bureau program. It's run through a group called Responder Life, and I'm not sure exactly what their guidelines are. But Daryl, I've got your email, and I can get you in touch with that organization to explore that possibility further.
Perfect. Thank you, Commander. This next question is from Ann. Hazelwood, specifically the Menlo Park District at 122nd and Burnside, has been an epicenter for gun violence for a while, and now we're seeing a significant increase in drug trafficking as well. We've been working with Safe Blocks and PMO and the NERT teams, who are great, and ads, but that will only take us so far. Is there a plan for a more sustained and strategic police presence similar to what's happening downtown? Because the similarities between Old Town and Menlo Park are obvious. Both are service-rich environments in a community that has a lower income, median income than other parts of the city and fewer amenities. Either one of you can probably take that one.
Well, I can start, and then if there's other information that I missed, certainly the chief can clean up for me here. I'm not sure which Ann this is. I think I got a 50% chance of identifying the right Ann. But there are some similarities between Old Town and 122nd and Burnside. And in fact, I just had a conversation yesterday with the Safe Rest Village team about the Safe Rest Village there in Menlo Park and some of the challenges that they're having with the environment. In terms of a sustained police presence, one of the things that I have to think about is making sure that what we do, if it's going to be sustained, is also sustainable for our officers. And so we've definitely got plans to increase our presence there with the neighborhood response team. They are working heavily. In fact, they just made, I think, 6 arrests just north of 122nd and Burnside related to an area that's known for drug dealing. We've run criminal interdiction missions out there. In terms of being able to have a walking beat or a bike team in there, I think that's something great to think of for the future. For the time being, the other thing that I'm exploring is trying to get the focused intervention team to come out and partner with us on some group missions similar to the ones that they've done recently in North Precinct. And so I think you'll see an additional police presence there. We've also got great partnerships with the Street Services Coordination Team, with the PMO office, and with some of our other system partners to help, because we realize that the issues that are there at 122nd and Burnside are not just a law enforcement problem. There's other parts of the system that can help and participate in the solution.
Yeah, and I would just add that I'm very much aware when I look at the police bureau and I look at the city of Portland, I look at the whole city. And I do know that the city has different expectations and challenges throughout. So, what's true for Southwest might not be true for North or Northeast or Inner Southeast or Outer East County, whatever it might be. But I'm constantly looking at the whole city. And I really want the commanders to use the latitude within their precincts to be able to address the issues that they face. And the chief's office direction is for them to be creative, to be curious, to listen to the community. And then we are always looking to adjust our resources to be able to support those efforts. I could easily see in the future, an increased amount of people being available to be able to take on some of those things that some of those challenges you mentioned there in that area specifically, but also throughout East County. We have a number of people that are completing their probation this year and next year. And we're always very, specific about where those new officers go to be able to support both the commander's initiatives and meet the community expectations. So I hear what you're saying, and it's certainly not lost on me that Downtown can sometimes be seen and in fact be beneficiaries of some of resources that could easily be applied in other parts of the city. And just know we're always looking at that. When that's available, it is top priority for us. So thanks for the question.
Thanks, Chief. This next question comes from Lisa, and I think this is best directed at Commander Jensen, seeing as a lot of this work is done in his precinct. So, Commander, how can the general public help with human trafficking? How can the general public help families who become homeless and faced with those dangers?
So there are lots of community organizations out there that are dedicated to both helping folks that find themselves on the street and helping folks that are involved in trafficking. I think the best way to do that, to help with either one of those, is to research the organizations and find one that fits with your values and your approach, and get involved with one of those organizations that already exists so that you can leverage the structure that's already in place. And getting involved can mean, donating time, donating money, advocating. I think the other thing that folks can do is make sure that the approach that the city is taking to both of those issues and the approach the state is taking to both of those issues, the county is taking to those issues, aligns with what their personal values are, with the approach they want to see from government. And if there's something that is out of place, then please write your elected officials and let them know what your position is so that your voice can be heard. And then also, if there's something that isn't aligned that you want to see continue, again, let the elected officials know so that they can make the appropriate choices as they are drafting policies and laws and allocating resources.
Yeah, and Commander, this might be a situation too where if you see something, say something, right? It might not be in the moment, but if you notice a lot of trafficking happening in a specific intersection, you can call non-emergency and we'll be notified and perhaps put that on a list of intersections to take a look at down the road, correct?
Yeah, that's a great idea, Mike. Thanks for mentioning that. You can also send us an email at crimetips@police.portlandoregon.gov and let us know about that. That doesn't make an official entry in our computer-aided dispatch system, but we will get the information to the human trafficking folks.
Perfect, thanks. I wanted to give a chance for everyone to ask a question that has, so I'm going to circle back to Ariel from Coin, and this one would be for Chief Day. Are the more police patrols that are out and about following the violence this summer, Chief, do you believe they're working? And are these extra patrols sustainable? With more members being sworn in, will we be able to see more patrols to keep people safe continuing?
Well, thank you for that. Yes, I do believe they are making a difference. I mean, we had extra patrols out last weekend. We were able to make the subject stop after the shooting in Northeast. As Commander Jensen mentioned, we seized a number of firearms. We did not have any homicides over the weekend, and it was a really hot, busy weekend. So I'm grateful for that. Really, the premise of policing is based upon swiftness and certainty. This is why when you put a police car on the side of the road, people slow down because they believe they're going to get stopped immediately and there's going to be a consequence. The reality is, given the demand for service, it's difficult to meet that same standard of swiftness and certainty. So the more that we can be seen and be visible, it doesn't even require enforcement. It really just requires that presence for starters, can really have a difference. The difficulty is that, as I said earlier, and in regards to your sustainability is, it's definitely a challenge. Our members are spending inordinate amount of time at the office, taking time away from their families, as well as their own, physical and mental health. So we're trying to constantly gauge how much we ask of them and how much we give them the space to be able to recover and enjoy, life outside of the police bureau. We are constantly hiring. We are constantly moving people through their training phases and getting them out in patrol. And I do think in 2025, we're going to see some progress there. But frankly, the police bureau's lost almost 300 members in the last several years. I mean, when I was hired in 1990, I had recently met with the chief of police, who was chief when I was hired, and he told me he had 1,050 officers in 1990. And like I said, today we have about 800, and the city was about 415,000 back then, and it's about 625,000 now. So we are really resource scarce and doing our very best to try and maximize those. And we will always show up to do the best of our ability. This is not a woe is me speech, but it is a conversation we're going to be having with our electeds and with other city officials and community members about right sizing the department so we can provide really just the basic core level of service. It'll not only be help increase safety, help increase mental and physical health of our officers, but it's actually more fiscally responsible. Doing this work on overtime is at a cost of time and a half. And if we were able to get to a proper staffing level, we could do this work independent of overtime. There would actually be a long-term cost savings to the city. So more to come on that, but thanks for the question.
And before we get to our final question, just a reminder that if you do have a question, now is the time to ask it. You can throw it into the chat here as we address this final question. And this one might be back to the chief or commander. Feel free to weigh in if you have thoughts. But the question is, why are we seeing so many shooting deaths this summer?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, I mean, violence, particularly gun deaths or gun violence, is really difficult to predict. There are so many factors that go into these events. So I can't comment to, a specific reason. We are still below our trend, our homicide trend from last year. And I'm encouraged by that. But certainly we have seen a high level of death and tragedy in the last 45, 60 days. I don't have the numbers exactly. I think Mike can correct me. I think it was 11 or so in the last, 6 to 8 weeks or something to that effect. So some of that is just sort of human nature in policing. We know that in the summertime, we tend to see an increased amount of activity. People are more out, they're more in the public space. It's hot, tempers can flare, poor decisions get made. But this conversation, and we just had it today at Dawson Park around violence, it really needs to be a community-led conversation. It's not going to be solved by the Portland Police Bureau. It's going to be solved when all of us come together and find some common ground. That does not necessarily mean we have to be in agreement, but we have to be willing to tackle many of the deeply embedded social issues that our communities face. Public safety is not reliant upon the police. Public safety is clean water, paved roads, good lighting, good education, housing, access to medical care. All of those things, employment, lead to a safer community. And I believe we have relied too long on the police to suppress problems that we've been unwilling to really take on and fix. And although we do answer the call, because 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, I know that somebody's out there and they will show up eventually, even if it takes us a while to get there. But this is not a sustainable model for us as a community. And it's going to require all of us leaning in. And I know many of you are doing that. I know that's why you're here tonight, because you're passionate about this. You care deeply about East County. I've seen the work, I've heard the work, I've been out there, I'm familiar with it, both as a chief and in my prior time of service. And we're blessed to have you. But it's going to take, a lot more than the 30 or 40 of us on this call to continue to lead this conversation. So thank you so much for that.
Well, thank you, Chief, and thank you, Commander Jensen, and thank all of you for taking the time to join us tonight. Chief says it often, almost daily, that we, the Portland Police Bureau, are part of the community. So for everyone to take time out of their busy days and gather here for this conversation, it means a lot to us. So thank you. Again, one final reminder that this event has been recorded and will be put up on our YouTube page probably as soon as tomorrow morning. With that, one final thank you and have a wonderful evening. Take care.